Good morning there, my friends. Welcome to another installment with Breakfast with the Batman. Right now I'm on a little bit of a Lord of the Rings tear, and I want to start concentrating on a few different things that are interesting me. The Planetary, the Great Seeing Stones. These are artifacts, true magical items of artifact nature. Something in Lord of the Rings that you don't see in the movies and in the novels themselves as much as you do, your traditional fantasy sword and sorcery hack and slash whatever game systems and or movies that follow our game system genre is the flamboyant use of magic. And Tolkien included magic, but I think he wanted it. This is just my opinion. He wanted it to be at a base, a sublime level. He wanted it to be so ingrained in the way the mysteries of the world that you don't see the wizards wandering around, flashing lightning bolts and fireballs everywhere they go, and there's a cost for them to do so. Gandalf uses magic very sparingly, mostly because, like the Force, if anytime he uses a concentrated use of his mana, of his magic ability, it basically sends up a flare to anybody who uses this stuff who may be watching. So, agents of Sirhan himself, Sirhan, all can track his movements and where he's at, and more or less what he might be up to based on these spectacular uses of magic. On the other hand, they use them. The use of subtle magic is quite common, and it's overlooked in a lot of aspects. We see it in the elves. The See it in some of the crafting abilities of the dwarves, and how some of their weapons seem to be nearly indestructible. Then there's few instances of it in the Manish kingdom, the Manish world. One of these is the Planetary, and only reason we even know about these particular seeing stones is that it plays a small role in the second movie. Saruman is eventually corrupted by Sauron, and in part it's because Saruman believed he understood and mastered the great seeing stone of Isengard and used it heavily. Well, Gandalf understood the dangers of doing this because it opened up the individuals, if they were weak-willed, made it easy for the other side to dominate them, which is what we see what happens to Pippin when Pippin takes the stone. They don't do it in the movie, but they do. Well, they do a little bit in the movie, but it's better defined in the books. You get a better understanding of what went down, and Sauron was able to manipulate Pippin to some degree if he had chose. At the moment, he was just shocked and surprised and intrigued by this halfling figure, and he immediately dispatched the ring rest to go fetch Pippin, which would have been a bad day for Pippin if that had happened. Which is why one of the two reasons why Gandalf says, "Okay, we got to run, and you're going to go with me." So he took Pippin with him because of all the people in the party, it was Pippin or Gandalf had the best chance of protecting Pippin from the ring rats who wanted to take him back to their master, so the master could interrogate him much further about what do you know what's going on. Now, originally the plant here, I believe there was seven of them, nine seeing stones. Yeah, nine seeing stones. No, seven. Three of the seven Planetary lie within the bounds of Arthedain. Okay, so in this particular supplement, the Rangers of the North, they have a section on the Planetary right here. And it goes into not into great depths, but I also have them in the Magic Compendium, and they have a little better detail on it. They talk about the history, the creation of these things, the powers of them, and the misconceptions. This is the atypical crystal ball, if you want to look at it that way. But the devices could be utilized to a certain limited degree to communicate between themselves. So they couldn't have verbal conversations. They couldn't just sit down pick up a phone or talk over the computer to their buddy. That's not how it worked. They sent images, and the person on the other end had to interpret what they were seeing to some degree. They also had abilities to the seers would master these things over a lifetime to learn how to focus the planetary in what they needed to see or wanted to see. Only a handful of people were supposed to be able to do this, and it took a lifetime of devotion and training to it. And then there's the bloodline of Nermer, the descendants of Isaac, of Elendil, of Isidore, and Inorin, and now it's Orion, however it's pronounced. Um, Aragon. This is why Aragon was able to pick up the Planetary and wrest it away from Sirhan and force it and bend it back to his will, because he has the bloodline, he has the blood right to use these things. P. Aragon is a very willful person. Very willful person. The fact that he's not tempted by the One Ring, he's one of the very few humans who are not tempted by the One Ring. He knew the cost. He understood the cost, but he understood it better than anyway, because in an aspect it was the bane of his family. It was because Isidore could not his will wasn't strong enough to resist the lure of the One Ring. Aragon's able to do this, which is critical to his character and to the story, to be truthful. So the same thing goes with the Planetary. And in the process, he uses this device to upset Sirhan's plans. He freaks Sirhan out to some degree. He shows him the Narzel, the broken sword reforged, so he can unveil the flame of the West, pointing out to, this is the thing that cut off your finger the first time, friend, and it's coming for you. Yeah, I'm coming for you. And that's something that Sirhan's not common. Not it's an emotion I imagine Sirhan does not have too often. Fear, and this is one of those times. So Sirhan, it prompts Sirhan to prematurely launch his attack against Gondor, which when it comes to that, and they talked about that, I kind of puzzled for a minute, and I thought, gee, many Christmas, how much bigger and more potent would the combat force been against Minas Tirith had Sirhan been able to complete all of his plans, instead of launching a preemptive strike with a significant portion of his force? What more sinister final plans did he have in preparing to make sure that the end of Gondor was done? And as it was a near thing. Truth is, the numbers, the power was on Sauron's side, but at the end of the day, he didn't carry the field. And there's a number of combinations as to why. It's not just the Rohirrim riding from the north at the nick of the time, but it's also Aragorn and his lineage being able to raise an army of the undead, and have them carry the battle in the south. Which in the movie they don't really don't do much justice to it. I understand they had a couple scenes they cut out for time constraints, but they don't do the justice. In the books, you see it, you understand better just how big a place Gondor was, and how much Aragorn's role in liberating it really was. The fact that he came up through the Heartlands and with an army of undead behind him, and overran all of Sauron's southern forces, defeated the Corsairs of Umber on the river, and protected several key cities along the realm. And in the process, his arrival and his method of arrival and his leadership skill impressed quite a few of the southern lords that had stayed behind to defend the country, and they rallied behind him and followed him north. Some of them, majority of them, were sent to a certain location to help counter another southern army coming up, an easterling army or a southern army that was threatening Paligar. But that's one of those things in war where there's a lot more going on than what we see in the climactic area, in the movie itself. But the Planetary itself gave because these were one of the handful of relics or artifacts that were salvaged from the destruction of Nuremberg, and Aerodale and his sons brought them to Middle Earth and split them up. They sent four of them to the south, and three of them went to the north. And it's through these devices that the larger dual kingdom of Arnor and Gondor were able to work in tandem to some degree to anticipate each other's needs and to ride to each other's rescue when necessary, although it doesn't always work so well for Arnor in this aspect. It also helps further solidify this as Nemorians in exile, if you will, the Nemorians' new homelands. It took a piece of the larger picture from their ancestors and brought it with them, and their placements were key political and military locations. So the largest of the three in the north was placed at Weathertop on the Sol, and indirectly it becomes the center point of Arnor, and many conflicts are fought in and around the slopes for the control of the Sears Tower, which contained the Planetary. And at the end, the Witch King of Angmar is thwarted when the last Arthedain king escapes, and he takes two of the three Planetary with him, including the one at Amasol to the great north, and then is lost, and they're lost from history. It is said in the latter part of uh, the add-on sections of the third book that in the Fourth Age, one or two of the Planetary from the north are recovered and returned to Aragon as a gift, and he reestablishes it at Weathertop. I'm not sure what happened to the other one. I know that the third one was placed in the towers of the towers of the Blue Hills that overlook Linden, and because it's sort of a myth or a a legend in the halflings that if you went to the far downs and then climbed the White Tower, you could see across the broken sea, or the bent sea to the undying lands via this magic stone, and that's what it was placed there for, was to see to the west, to solely watch to the west, mostly as certain elements of the Dunedain still longed for connectivity to the elves. Not that they lusted over the Undying Lands anywhere. These are the survivors that understood the folly that their majority of their fellows did not when Sirhan tricked them and convinced them into invading the Undying Lands, much to their demise. Right? So these are very important artifacts, politically speaking, very rare items of magical power, and we only briefly see them, which is right. These are not sort of things you see flung around. That is a common trope in or common thread in our gaming genre, where we want magic in abundance. We literally want magic to be so common that it's not absurd when somebody who's a bit of a novice when it comes to game mastering rolls up a treasure trove based off of the stats in the book and ends up with 250 rings of +1 rings of protection. And you kind of have to grunt and grin and go, in what part of the country is there a magical factory cranking out dozens of these things a day, that we could have 200 of them just stuck in some dragon's hoard, or in some troll's hole? How can you have 10 rings +2 rings of whatever? And not to mention the sheer volume of different kinds floating around. In Lord of the Rings, magic rings were very rare, and most of them were accounted for in one form or another, although it is implied that there are lesser magic rings. And so it's through that little thread that Gandalf makes a comment to Frodo about that this is the ring, not one of the many lesser rings, and that there were many lesser rings that were created in the process of learning and mastering the ring crafting trade, if you will. And it's from that thread that allows the game designers of Middle Earth to incorporate more magic concept, more magic items, more magic period than what you would ideally have. Because if the game creators had stuck to the J.R.R. Tolkien's premise, you wouldn't have we wouldn't have wizards and sorcerers and so on in any number in the game. And of course, that goes at the time in the 80s when ICE was creating this, goes in the face of what the players, the consumers, i.e., us, wanted. We wanted that magic. We wanted that, and we wanted it in abundance. So they had to include it. That's the reason why it's there, at least in my opinion. Right? Okay. Enough of me rambling on about that. It's an interesting subject to me. I hope you find it interesting to some degree. I don't know if you'll gain any benefit from it or not. I have no idea. I just thank you for viewing my videos and supporting my little blog. Those handful of you guys that are subscribers, God bless y'all. And if you know anybody who's interested in this stuff, let them know. Maybe they'll want to become, they want to sign up and see more. Maybe I'll get better with the more of these I do, right? It's not about the money. God knows we ain't making no money off of this stuff. Thank you, go. So, on with the next one.